Professor Cooper holds a DPhil in Media Studies from the University of Oslo, Norway. And in December 2019, he received an honorary doctorate from Michigan State University in the US. And another from the University of Montpellier in France, where he rubbed shoulders with President Macron in 2021. Prof. Cooper has a notable publication record, having authored journal articles, books, and book chapters in his main discipline, which is media studies and journalism. He's an active member of several civil society organizations and is a board member of a number of tertiary education networks, organizations, and initiatives around the world. Prof. Cooper holds a professorship in English at the University of Pretoria. Ladies and gentlemen, I now hand you over to Professor Cooper to introduce Professor Scheepers. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mtombeni, for that generous introduction. It's one thing I forgot to say, to delete my bio, because I want all the focus today to be on our inaugurating professor, as we say. We call them. Colleagues, a very warm welcome to this inaugural lecture and a very good evening. This, as you must understand, is a celebration today. The professor is not on test. She has become a professor. So we are actually celebrating her ideas and learning from her. So that is the spirit, if you like. I'm also glad that somewhere along the line in my busy schedule, I misunderstood. I thought that GIBS requested that we hold this inaugural lecture here, because typically they are held in the Senate room of the university. And somewhere it entered my head that there was a request to do it here, which I was happy to agree. So it's a nice coincidence, because it's the first and it's done at GIBS as well. The rest of you will have to come to Pretoria. Thank you very much. Professor Caren Scheepers started a career in public service as a registered counseling psychologist at the Department of Labor, and then went on to join Sanlam Insurance Company as a management consultant for 8 years, after which she gained international exposure through her role as a leadership consultant at Germany Consulting for 4 years. She then founded an independent consulting firm called Irodo Consulting, sounds Spanish, that specializes in team interventions, executive coaching, psychometric assessments, and organizational development projects. Professor Scheepers joined the Gordon Institute of Business Science, if you don't know, that is GIBS, in 2007 as a part-time lecturer, and since 2014, she has been a full-time member of faculty, lecturing in organizational development, organizational behavior, strategic leadership, and contextual leadership. With regards to her qualifications, she received a Bachelor of Social Science as well as an Honours Social Science and Master's degrees from the University of the Free State. Her PhD was in psychology at the University of the Free State. Now she's a professor of UP, we forgive, where she went to school. She received her associate and professional coaching courses, qualifications from the University of Cape Town Business School, Prof, watch it, and Accelerating Coach Excellence Program Certificate from ISF International Coach Federation. Prof. Scheepers is an accredited professional coach with the International Coaching Federation. She authored 2 books on leadership coaching and co-edited the Women Leadership in Emerging Markets book with Sherin Chengadu for Routledge, Taylor, and Francis, a very leading prestigious publishers. She's also recently co-authored Change Leadership in Emerging Markets book for Springer, another prestigious publisher, with Dr. Sonia Swart. Professor Scheepers publishes in both local and international academic journals in these domains, as well as case studies for teaching purposes. Prof. Scheepers received international accolades for her case studies, because I was wondering that did I leave that out, including the most outstanding contribution to the case method by the Case Center International Competition in 2020. First prize in the European Foundation for Management Development Competition for the best case study in the African Case Studies category for 2020, and third place in international case competition for the Central and East European Management Development Association in 2015. At GIBS, Prof. Scheepers received the award for the most prolific researcher in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2022, and 2021, and is on course to receive the same in 2022. No pressure, Prof. And the award for the most prestigious general article amongst GIBS faculty members in 2020, another one is coming in 2022. Again, no pressure, Prof. She also received the Citizenship Award for the contribution and care to students during COVID-19 by GIBS in 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now ask the professor to tell us what she professes. And Professor Scheepers, your audience tonight.
Thank you, Professor Coupe and Professor Ntombeni. And thank you for each and every one of you that is attending this inaugural lecture this evening, and also those of you online. Welcome and thank you for your support. As you can see on the program, my topic for this evening is Contextual Leadership Studies, Contribution to the Advancement of Women's Entrepreneurship. So the question that I would like us to ask, and each and every one of you to consider and to reflect on, is how might we unlock the potential of women entrepreneurs? So I am going to share with you how I am supporting women's entrepreneurship through my research, through my case studies, and you've heard from Professor Coupe how much I like case studies, my teaching and coaching and consulting. The question is, though, from where you are, so just from where you are, how could you support women entrepreneurship? So I would like you to reflect on that in your context. How might you also support, from your side, women entrepreneurship? So how my structure here is to first speak about gender equality from an economic perspective. Then I'll talk more about the theoretical lens, the context and leadership, and also context and entrepreneurship, and then more deeper into gender studies, especially the temporal and spatial context. And then, of course, I'll speak about my future research, as Prof. Coupe requested. So for me, it is very important that we look at the intersection of scholarship. So scholarship about economics, leadership, entrepreneurship, and gender studies. And of course, there are institutional boundaries between these domains. However, I am advocating this evening for an interactionist, transdisciplinary approach to this phenomena and to understand better the complex phenomenon of women entrepreneurship. So let's first look at the economic perspective. So the question is, why should we care? Why should we care about women entrepreneurship? It's because of the economic cost of gender inequality. So globally, it amounts to $160.2 trillion US, which is a huge number. Closer to home, in sub-Saharan Africa, it's 2.5 trillion. So we are supporting as a school as well the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, and this is, of course, UN SDG number 5. Types of industries. Women are more in healthcare, education, and social services, which, of course, will have low profitability. Then women invest half the amount of money than men in other businesses. Women entrepreneurs have 20% lower confidence. And as you've heard, that I'm a psychologist, so this to me is very sad to hear that there's 20% lower confidence in women in their own capabilities also to start a business, and that we call also in this literature entrepreneurial self-efficacy. So women will take less risks than men. So if we think of the women entrepreneurs that will start a business, so globally, it's 274 million that are involved in startups. However, unfortunately, only 139 million women are owners of established businesses. So we lose about half of them from startups to established businesses. And this economic growth is hampered when women are not contributing. So we also need to think not only of the economic impact, but also the social impact of this inequality. Because half of women entrepreneurs in the specific studies that we have done also showed the social value that women are creating. So half of women entrepreneurs, 48%, are driven by a desire to contribute to the greatest societal good, actually. So by supporting, and if we can address this issue between the startups and established businesses, then we contribute to social and economic growth. So yes, what have we done now to also help address this issue? So in terms of the theoretical lens, we have spoken now about the economic view. Now let's move then to the leadership view, as that is a specific contribution that I've also made. And all of these domains are, of course, also embedded in context. And when I speak about context, it's time and space that I'm referring to. So wonderful in the organizational behavior and the leadership literature, we see a lot of this contribution about the typology about leadership. So I have an MBA elective, an MPhil elective here at GIBS, and it's been running for 7 years. Contextual leadership, and I teach my students to use this type of framework that Johns is also offering us so that we systematically are able to also analyze context. For instance, there's this omnibus context, so this is a typical framework, which is much more, omnibus means more macro or looking at the larger picture, and discrete context is more specific. This evening we're only focusing on the one side, the spatial and temporal context. So I would like to say more about that. So if you leave this inaugural lecture this evening and you need to just remember one word, it will be location. So what do we mean by that? So leadership is embedded in its context. That means that there are boundary conditions for leadership. So it's not as simple to say, let's be a great leader and you will have great followers, or people will now be highly engaged in your organization. There are boundary conditions, and we call them moderators and mediators. So some of my studies have shown that there's actually other variables that is like lowering that relationship between leaders and their followers. So one of the very, very important background here is Sternberg's theory about contextual intelligence. Maybe you will remember this picture, the chameleon. So this is a metaphor of what it is to say we have contextual intelligence. It means that when context changes, leadership changes. Or when context changes, leadership should actually change and adapt. And that's also then some of my findings from my research on contextual leadership studies is, on the one hand, a mediator was the innovation climate, that leaders need to create this climate, and they cannot just, be self-aware and all those nice things about leadership, but they actually need to go further into the organization and create that climate. Environmental dynamism as another moderator, I think in our context where it's volatile, and I think we also experienced that this evening, volatility, and that volatility and the dynamism in our environment is a moderator and can have a huge influence on leaders. So, I've now discussed some of the leadership aspects, and the question can be, so what does leadership scholarship then offer entrepreneurship? I think a leader, and that is Yukel's definition, is somebody who influences. And I've just said to you that wonderful study about the turnarounds and that there are different leadership styles required in different phases of turnarounds, we can actually also apply that to entrepreneurship. We may think of a white male or some implicit theory about what this masculine, bold, aggressive person is like that will be this hero leader. Now, actually, the same applies in entrepreneurship. And with these books that we have written, the interviews that we have done, to me it was sad that the women did not see themselves as leaders. And then when we interviewed entrepreneurs and asked the women about their entrepreneurship, they'll say, actually, I don't know if I'm an entrepreneur. But when you look at the turnover of that business, it's just absolutely amazing. But they don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. So it's as if that self-identity was just not there, that they are entrepreneurs. So that made me think that there's an implicit theory in leadership that we can also apply in entrepreneurship. And then the question is this the right question? To ask what can leadership offer as a mature field of entrepreneurship? What about the other way around? So what does entrepreneurship scholarship also offer leadership? So of course, an entrepreneur is somebody who is engaged in the discovery and implementation of opportunities that create value. And entrepreneurship occurs where there's high risk, uncertainty, and resource constraints. Now, actually, those of you that are working in corporates may also say, we're also in an environment of high risk, uncertainty, and resource constraints. So therefore, also, entrepreneurial ventures, sometimes there's this team that's actually starting that business. So it's actually shared team leadership. And there's also leadership that's emerging when there's actually no formal authority. So what a wonderful opportunity to do leadership studies in entrepreneurship and learn from entrepreneurship. And then there's Pollock and other people also saying, in this VUCA world, and I'm sure you've heard the word VUCA before, about our volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity. In this world, there's less differences actually between entrepreneurship and leadership. So what is entrepreneurship scholars offering leadership is just absolutely amazing. So there's this Friederike Welter. She actually invited me to Bonn, but I didn't have the funds all the time to be able to spend time there. But she and Ted Baker have gone actually a lot further than the scholarship in leadership about context. So they looked at contextual leadership. So if you think of gender, and you see that Friederike Welter is putting gender right in the middle, and the where and when, remember we said it's about time and space, but that where is actually your social context, your institutional context, your geographical context, of course, that spatial environment, but then the when is your historical and temporal contexts. So they have taken this idea of the context and how you need to take context into account a lot further, actually. So I think leadership can actually learn a lot from entrepreneurship in that sense. So then, what would be the different contributions here? So if you think of economics, the question that I think economics are also, economists are bringing data. And Prof. Marianne Mathieu, our director of research here, whenever we have a discussion, and like I say to her, you know, there's this care economy, and women are not recognized for the caregiving work they are doing. So she will say, I have data on that. And that is typically what I think we must value from economists, that they have data, they have great data. Then I will say, so the great contribution is, what is the rate of women entrepreneurs' business ownership per country or sector? However, then I would like to ask a deeper question and to say, okay, that's the data, but what does it mean? And why is it like that? And what is the deeper reasons for it? And I think that's where this other contributions also is helpful. So in terms of leadership, how can women leaders in corporates also be more entrepreneurial, especially in a time like COVID and those type of things? And also, how can women entrepreneurs improve their leadership skills? Because if they can improve their leadership skills, hopefully they will employ more people, and that is the thing. The solo entrepreneurs is actually not helping us to create more jobs. So and you see the nexus there is this implicit masculine prototype. So let me say something about that. And I won't go through all the theories, but just to say, so if you leave here, you may want to be able to talk about the prototype. The prototype, and there's a masculine prototype for leaders, entrepreneurs, And then lately I have found more about in terms of international trade with exporters, that there's also a masculine prototype there. It's actually even more pronounced in that type of environment where it's high risk and where people need to be able to be very courageous and bold. And there's definitely a masculine prototype there as well. So the social identity theory is helping us there to realize that it's because leaders are more effective if somebody fits that prototype that they have about what is a great leader. Then the role congruency theory says leadership is primarily defined in culturally masculine terms, as I've just mentioned. And then this study, the last theory here, makes me think of a story what I've experienced by listening to a woman and how she shared how she saw herself because of how other people saw her. And the symbolic interactionalism theory helped us to understand that. And that to me was actually quite sad. She was a black woman, and she said to me that, Caren, I look like my mentor, I look like my mentor's helper in his home. And therefore, I expect him to see me like his helper in his home, and therefore, I don't feel we're on the same level. And to me, that was a sad story, and also showing us why we need the stories and this qualitative research to actually understand better. Now, how is it that a woman will actually respond in a certain way? So this theory helped us to understand that, and I have written that up, and it's in his final revisions. I'll show you. That article is to come. I'll show you about that. But now, in terms of the context, when and where, let's just talk about when now. And I think that COVID, although it was a terrible pandemic that we experienced and are experiencing, and my dean is reminding me of, that we are still in COVID, we're in the COVID era, that I think, and we know that women entrepreneurs has been hardest hit also by COVID because of the types of businesses that they run, the tourism and hospitality and the vulnerable conditions made that they were hardest hit. But now COVID also created opportunities for research. And I am very happy to share with you, we used that new, it's not a new, but from 2017, a scale on dramatic social change, because we said, what is COVID like? And we said it's this dramatic social change, actually. So we used that in quantitative studies, and both of these have, and I'm very happy that this study, and it was our students from the MPhil in Corporate Strategy, and those were their first, that was our new course, and it was their first research that they delivered for us, and we are very happy that we are able to publish that work of theirs. So this is also more about the when. The era we are in is also the digital era, of course, and I think after COVID it's actually even been enhanced, this digital era. So we did research on women who owned digital platforms, and that gave me a lot of hope, and I think it's wonderful opportunities, and I think there are more coming of these type of platform businesses that are creating so many opportunities for women-owned businesses and, of course, other entrepreneurs as well. What we did see there, though, was that artificial intelligence can also actually discriminate and be biased against women. So in that sense, we need to work closer together in terms of transdisciplinary research. Professor Coupe, I think we also need to speak more to the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and IT about these issues, also discrimination in the algorithm, actually. So, and humanities is where gender studies is also more pronounced. So I would like us to also work closer to humanities in terms of gender studies. So this latest research also on the mentoring of women leaders in emerging markets, and like I gave you that story about this woman who felt that somebody, her mentor, was seeing her as if she is the helper in the home, that also made me think that in a South African context, we can actually not only speak about gender, because gender and race is so intersect in our environment. And therefore, the intersectionality theory is a brilliant one to use in this kind of research. So I have 4 articles that I could share with you on this type of research, where we've used the intersectionality theory as well. And that was about sponsorship and mentorship of women. But this one about Mshlangu, Scheepers, Impress, that one, equity, diversity and inclusion, it is accepted, but we still need to change a couple of things. And that one is where the story that I told you about, we have that in that specific article. But then, I think we are actually, in terms of where, in a very interesting context. I think emerging markets are actually offering us opportunities. And those 2 books, you heard Sonia Swart and I wrote the one on change leadership in emerging markets. We have ample examples there for you of the amazing innovation that is also happening in our emerging markets, sometimes out of necessity and sometimes just because of capitalizing on opportunities that there are. And then also the women leadership in emerging markets, like I said, to me it was actually quite sad doing those interviews with this 46 women, because they did not see themselves as leaders. But if you look at the positions they have in society, they are seen as leaders by other people, but not by themselves necessarily. And another great study was about women in townships and how the women were supporting one another in townships, and also how churches supported the women. So that made us think, and Prof. Anastasia Momabolo and I are taking that further in terms of religion's influence also on entrepreneurship. As that study opened up these ideas for us, whereas the rest of the world may not necessarily consider religion and entrepreneurship, whereas this type of study has shown us how important religion can be, especially specifically the support of churches. And I think during COVID, we also experienced how churches were also supporting so many people. And in this environment we are in, and that's why I showed you that picture of the contrast and the Gini coefficient. And that's also what economists are giving us, is a Gini coefficient and that calculation and giving us that data. So one of the books that we are busy with, and I'm not sure if Prof. is Ethne Swartz, but I think it's midnight in New Jersey at the moment, whether she is online right now. But she's one of the editors. Marianne Mattia and I are all editors on this work. And the question that we ask in this book is, can Africa leapfrog through technology? So this book is in its last editions and revisions and so on. So watch this space, and we will invite you all for the launch as well for this book. And I think it also creates huge opportunities for women entrepreneurs. So in this book on the leapfrogging, it was also Prof. Marianne Mathias' idea, because she actually said there's this economic theory about phases and that you need for economic growth. But the question is, can we leapfrog it? So you saw a chameleon, now you saw a frog. So I think you will remember at least those 2 from this inaugural address. So can we leapfrog, meaning can we actually step over some of those phases of industrialization, because we are skipping over and going to services immediately due to the digitization. So what an amazing opportunity that is. In this book, we also speak a lot about the African Free Trade Agreement, and also creating opportunities and opening up markets for us. And one of my chapters in this book is about technology hub collaborations for a Pan-African collaboration all over the continent. And if we can get these technology hubs to collaborate better. And then what it also provides is the opportunity then for women to give input into global supply chains. So one of the future research projects I would love to share is one where we actually, now you have seen all 4 of those together, because we made a team of faculty from GIBS, from economic studies, leadership, entrepreneurship, and gender studies together. Now you see all of those circles are populated, and it's a wonderful project that we are working on. We are doing, looking at the lived experiences of women in trade. And it's for the World Trade Congress on gender in Geneva in December. So we are not just promising it, we will deliver it by December 2022, because that's when the conference happens. And as I said, that is the title. We are looking specifically at born global firms. I haven't even started talking about my case studies, and there's 43 of them, but the one I want to share is a born global firm of Carmine Tea. So it is a case study, and we went to the farm, and what a wonderful opportunity and interviews that we had there at the farm of these people growing Carmine or rooibos tea, and then distributing that directly from the farm to the consumer, and actually all over the world. And they started like that as Born Global from the start. So that was absolutely an amazing opportunity. And yeah, please read that case on Carmine tea and drink rooibos tea for South Africa's sake. So, and Prof. Caren Myers is also here. She's also on the team, and Prof. Anastasia Mamabola as well. So what a wonderful opportunity. And I think I just also want to say thank you that GIBS is giving us directors of research that is creating opportunities for all of us to collaborate. And, you know, I think I am very passionate about transdisciplinary research. And I think what you are hearing I'm saying is that I'm not just talking about it, I live it. If I think of a case study, just last year, the bestseller in all of my 43 cases is actually one that I did with our Prof. Mike Ward here, who is our finance professor. So, and that was just amazing to think that that case will do so well. We didn't even expect that. But I think it also shows that if there is this transdisciplinary work and the synergy that we get, even from finance and leadership together, and how well it's actually received by the marketplace. So it's actually quite amazing. Then also in terms of, we've heard now about when and where in terms of the context, I think who is also important. And I'm also directing my research more to followership. I think we are talking and teaching about leadership way too much. I think we need to teach a lot more about followership, because everybody tries to lead and not supporting the leaders actually as followers. So one of my articles also this year was published in a South African journal, and I want to say that yes, we want to aspire for high-level journals. I also think that we need to support the local journals, and I am on the editorial team for a South African journal, South African Journal of Economic and Management Sciences. I think it is an important journal, so please also channel your research there. We can not only, feed our research into the international journals, we need to build our current local journals. And there are 2 of my doctoral students, so next year we'll see each other on the podium for my doctoral students graduating. We pray for that. And 2 of them they are working on doctoral studies specifically on followership. So I think that is the way that I would like to go. So my question that I asked you in the beginning was, what are you doing? So from where you are, and you now know how important the where aspect of context is, so that could be your spatial context, geographically where you are, the institution that you are from where you are, how could you support women entrepreneurs in your context? As I have now explained to you how important it is that we support women entrepreneurs, not only for economic reasons, but also for social and societal growth. And yeah, that, like Rasa Michelle said, together we will grow an enterprising, inclusive Africa. So from my side, just thank you. Baie dankie. Siyabonga.